We are scheduled to travel for 10,000 miles in Sarton. For our flight to Moscow, we were obliged to land and change planes in Amsterdam, where we spent a night and a day. Our time was short, so we got only a fast look at the city and its people. Much of Amsterdam's land has been taken from the North Sea. It is costly, so houses are narrow and high. So narrow are the doors and stairs that furniture must be brought in through the windows by means of these beams. No language barriers are in evidence in Holland for English-speaking people. English is a required subject in all schools and has been for some time. So most people we approached, both young and old, spoke English well. The streets, like the houses, are also narrow, so cars and trucks are small. The streetcars, too, as you can see, are built to fit these narrow roads and sharp turns. These Hollanders are a very admirable people. They have built themselves a prosperous and thriving economy with very meager natural resources. They have made for themselves a standard of living far higher than many other peoples with much greater resources. The food is delicious and varied. Indonesian dishes are served in most restaurants, a result of the Netherlands' control of Indonesia for so many years. We had so little time in this city that none could be wasted on sleep. We have all been awake and on the go for the past 24 hours, and about now, we are ready for the long flight to Moscow. Early in the morning we took off. We are scheduled for a stop at Warsaw, Poland. Our attractive and friendly Dutch stewardess served us drinks, snacks, and smiles. And before we wished, our Dutch captain called out over the PA system, "Warsaw!" We were now behind the Iron Curtain. With just a bit of apprehension, we left the plane, and immediately we were aware of a slowdown in tempo. None of the hustle and bustle of a big city airport was in evidence. During the 30-minute stopover, not one plane landed or took off. I considered this a rather slow pace for a city of almost 1 million people, and the capital of Poland at that. We were to discover that everywhere we stopped in Russia, the pace of life was much slower than our own. This KLM Lockheed Electra plane we are on is to be our last contact with the Western world for the next 21 days. We don't know it now, but we shall not see an English paper or hear an English broadcast for the duration of our stay in Russia. We arrived in Moscow early in the evening, so our first look at this center of Soviet power was early the next morning. The imposing new building in the background is the Ukraine Hotel, where we are staying. This view from the hotel window overlooks the Moscow River. This is the capital city of all the Soviet Socialist republics, and it has a population of more than 6.5 million souls. Reliable sources state that it was founded in the year of 1147 by an ancient Russian prince. Moscow has grown since then in circular bands around the hub. The era of each band has contributed its art and architecture of its particular period. Boats plying the winding Moscow River may find their way to 5 seaports via connecting canals, Leningrad and the Baltic Sea in the north, and to the mighty Volga, 80 miles to the east. I was very anxious to photograph some Russian faces, and it being quite early, the only person about was this young fellow. He was watching a mother duck with her duckling feeding on a dead fish. The water of the river appeared to be as polluted as our own streams, and quite likely the contaminated water killed the fish. I am surprised that no one molests the wildlife. Perhaps it's because the diet of these ducks make them hopelessly unpalatable. Like everywhere else in the world, pigeons are plentiful and pesky. Uh-oh, Jeremy got her hand burned. Just a few years ago, Much of this area was swamp and wasteland. The city planners are deserving of much praise for laying out such wide streets and potentially beautiful boulevards. We shall become quite accustomed to the sight of seeing women doing the work of men. Russia's horrible loss of manpower in World War II makes this necessary. Women have filled every gap left by a lost man, and until new generations fill the hole in the population, they will continue their work. The Russians should be very proud of their women. It is now 8 o'clock in the morning, and the city is coming to life. These people are average Muscovites. To me, they appear to dress, act, and look much like the people of my own hometown. These particular people are probably the Russian counterpart of our own white-collar workers. If this is true, then I must say our own gals are much more style-conscious. If the many soldiers seen on the streets is any indication, Russia must have a huge army. Typically Russian are these thirst-quenching oases. We shall see them everywhere we travel in the Soviet Union. For 1 kopeck, approximately 1 cent, you get a drink of water. For 2 kopecks, you use the water to wash the communal glass, then fill it with a lemon-flavored drink. But the Coca-Cola of these people is a drink made from their beloved black bread. Fermented, slightly alcoholic, and first in popularity, it is called kvass and is sold throughout the Union. To most Americans, the symbol or trademark of Russia is the hammer and sickle. To me and my fellow travelers, the construction crane would be much more appropriate. The likeness of Lenin and the construction crane are the 2 sights that are seen so often they become commonplace. Lenin is revered as a god, and his posters and statues are countless. This is Komsomol Prospect, or Young Communist Street. It is considered to be a better class neighborhood, here, where they supposedly don't have classes. It is the home of doctors, lawyers, and other professional men and women. These scenes were taken from the balcony of a new friend's apartment. He is a photographer for a national magazine, and one of the comparatively few people in Moscow earning enough to own his own car. We shall meet him later. The next morning was wet and cloudy, but Lisa, our official and tourist guide, was being paid to show us the sights, and rain or shine, she showed us. This morning we are to visit Moscow University in the southwest section of the city. This scene is opposite the entrance to the university grounds. It is believed that Napoleon had his first view of Moscow at this very spot in 1812. Surrounding Lenin's stadium, seen in the center of the picture, are tennis, basketball, and volleyball courts, swimming pools, and other athletic facilities. Lenin Stadium itself holds more than 100,000 spectators. Moscow University is generally referred to as MGU, its Russian initials. It was founded in 1755 and is Russia's oldest university. This skyscraper is the chief building and is just one of 27 main buildings. The people of the Soviet Union are as travel-minded as our own folks, except they are limited to travel in their own or with special permission to satellite countries. The citizens of Moscow are justly proud of their university, and it is one of the top attractions for visitors to their capital. We saw travelers in Moscow from every corner of Russia. There are many shortages and few material things they can buy, so they use their extra money for travel. At the time of the Communist Revolt, there were more than 560 churches in Moscow. This is one of about 50 that has survived. The Moscow swimming pool is claimed to be the largest in Europe. It is heated in the winter, and even on the coldest day, the hardy Muscovites make full use of the pool. There are numerous sections of different depth, ranging from a child's wading area to a section meeting Olympic standards. These buildings were the dwellings of middle-class families before the revolution. Now, under communism, 6 or 8 families may share one building. The government food store is typical of most shops. They make no attempt to attract customers. Just seeing the doors open will bring customers aplenty. But with the constant shortages of most commodities, Ivan may exit as empty as he entered. The communists are awakening to the fact that tourism is a potent begetter of foreign money, especially American dollars, of which they have great need. Along with this awakening came the realization that the old churches, monasteries, and temples throughout Russia were priceless treasures and should be restored and preserved. This is Novodevichy Monastery. It was built about the end of the 17th century. From the beginning of the communist regime, it was allowed to deteriorate, but in 1965, complete restoration was begun. Its greatest claim to fame lies in the fact that many of Russia's famed poets and artists are buried here. Stalin's first wife and former Premier Bulganin's mother are interred here also. Throughout its many years of idleness, it has had never-ending visits from the devout older citizens. They remembered Novodevichy, or Little Girls' Convent, as it was when they were children. They haven't forgotten that this is consecrated soil. In the vastness of Russia's tremendous land area are many natural and man-made wonders. But the one most important, most popular spot in all the Russias is the Kremlin. This broad boulevard lies along its west wall. Only since 1955 has the Kremlin been opened to the public. In that first year alone, over 5 million people tramped through its grounds and buildings. No visitor should leave Russia without making a tour of the Kremlin. To the Russian people, it is a shrine, the seat of Soviet authority. Their visit is more accurately described as a pilgrimage, such as other peoples make to religious shrines. Each day, this square is completely filled with tourist buses. Every time I photographed faces, I realized more and more that these people are no different from us. As the trip progressed, all in our party agreed that the difference was circumstance and geography, nothing else. Last night, just by chance, we met an English-speaking professional photographer, and camera bugs, being what they are, we became friends at once. This is Leonid Bergoltsov, a top magazine photographer. He and his partner are shooting many pictures of our group for use in their magazine. Under the communist regime, a good photographer is rated quite high on the social scale. Their pay compares favorably with that of doctors and lawyers. Leonid's partner is Mark Gonkin. Mark owns his own car. Over here, that is the status symbol. It was Mark's apartment that we visited earlier. The first building seen when entering Red Square is the Historical Museum. It stands on the west end of Red or Krasnaya Square. Krasnaya means red or beautiful in Russian, and the name was in use centuries before the 1917 revolution. Gum department store borders the north side, the Moscow River to the east, and the Great Wall of the Kremlin to the south. In the center of the square stands St. Basil's Cathedral. Completed in 1560, it is Russia's most famous landmark to this day. Ahead is Ivan the Great Bell Tower. At the base of the tower is the Tsar's Bell, weighing 197 tons. It suffered a crack in its 2-foot thick wall while workers attempted to hang it, and it has never been rung. At the end of the street is Our Savior's Gate. It houses the Kremlin clock and chimes. The tower was built in 1491, even before America was discovered. Its gate is the main entrance to the Kremlin, and Napoleon himself entered the Kremlin through this portal and rode as a conqueror down this very street. Like Big Ben in England, the bell of Spasskaya's tower strikes every hour, and the sound is radioed over the whole of Russia. When an official car approaches the tower, the pedestrians are warned by a smaller bell that clangs incessantly. These steps lead to the Assumption Cathedral, where many of Russia's czars were crowned. Built in 1475, it is the oldest church in the Kremlin. It is in the process of being restored. Its many beautiful icons are being cleaned inch by inch of varnish and grime collected over the centuries. This small Cathedral of Our Savior was used mostly by priests and monks for their private worship. And here are the domes of the Annunciation Cathedral. This is the smallest church in Cathedral Square. It was built in the comparatively short time of 4 years, starting in 1484. After completion, it was destroyed by one of the many fires suffered by the Kremlin through the centuries. It was rebuilt by Ivan the Terrible in a more elaborate and extravagant manner than the original. No longer do any of these magnificent churches conduct religious services. Communists are atheists. This huge piece of artillery is known as the Tsar's cannon. When this gun was cast almost 400 years ago, it created considerable excitement throughout Russia. Never before had a single casting of such magnitude been attempted. Although mechanically workable, it has never been fired. It was created only for the Tsar's pleasure, and its 38 tons of weight makes it practically immovable. It has stood on this spot from the time it was finished. The cannonballs made to fit this monster are 3 feet in diameter and weigh 4,000 pounds each. To fire one of these balls would require a half ton of powder. The Palace of Congresses, built in 1961, is the youngest building in the Kremlin. It adds its modern architectural style to that of the earlier periods. During the day, chauffeured Zim limousines of high Soviet officials wait until the business of the day is finished. From the stairs of the GUM department store, we are looking across Red Square to the one most revered spot in Russia. It is the tomb of V.I. Lenin, the Abe Lincoln of the Russians. Day after day, countless thousands stand in line for hours to see the embalmed body of this man. Soldiers guard the entrance, and no one is allowed to carry a camera into the tomb. Lenin lies in a glass sarcophagus with soft pink spotlights focused on him. Until Stalin was defamed, he laid in a place of honor beside Lenin. Now he is a non-person, and he lies in an unmarked, flowerless grave in this row. Stalin's reign of terror is ended. New and kinder men are now at the helm in the Kremlin. Under Stalin, we would not be free to leave for Leningrad tonight. "5 minutes to 9 reads the clock across the street from our hotel. We have just arrived, and the first item to be unpacked was my camera. Taking pictures at this time of the evening without lights was too unusual to miss. Back home, getting pictures after 7 p.m. is difficult, even at the height of summer. We were told if we had been here a month earlier, in late June, we would have been able to shoot all through the night." The city of Leningrad lies on the 60th parallel. We are just below the Arctic Circle. On our side of the ocean, we must go to Upper Hudson Bay to find this amount of light at this time of the day and year. Leningrad is a city of many beautiful parks, wide boulevards, fine buildings, and great works of art. The people of Leningrad consider themselves a step above other Russian peoples. It was the people of Leningrad who forced the abdication of the last Tsar. It was the same people who attempted to establish a democratic form of government for Russia. Lack of a strong leader and no organization caused them to fail. The minority Bolsheviks, with their campaign of terror, led by Lenin, Trotsky, Stalin and company, forced their will on Petrograd and eventually all of Russia. Petrograd was changed to Leningrad in 1924 when Lenin died. We were to discover that the people were in the streets until midnight and later every night of the week. At the darkest part of the night, there was still light enough to read. The temperature is very comfortable. The stores stay open. And from what I saw, Russian television smells, so why not stay out? I wonder who does the work around here, though. The streets are filled with people all through the day, too. The next evening, we boarded the ever-present tourist bus and headed for the outskirts of town to see a circus. All over Russia, the circus is still a big attraction, and this one performs in Leningrad for the entire summer. In my opinion, it was a second-rate show. A good Russian circus is as good as any in all the world. Let's watch it, then you judge for yourself. Well now, looks like Ivan might have trapped those wild animals in somebody's hen house. The circus ended at 12 midnight, and when we got back outdoors, it was still daylight. The next morning, our very pretty and efficient guide, Tamura, starts us on our tour for the day. I chose to wander off on my own and came upon the kvass concession. You remember, this is the drink made from dark bread, slightly alcoholic and understandably popular. As you can see, the people appear to be well fed, adequately clothed, and infinitely better off under communism than they were under the rule of the czars. The staple foods are not too expensive. These prices are in kopecks, about the same value as our penny. Work clothes and unadorned practical wear apparel is reasonably priced, but anything smacking of luxury is high-priced, much more so than over here. Shoes were rather shoddy, as were most commodities, and only recently the economy has reached a point where more and better consumer goods will be available. The Russian beer is poor. When Ivan is just thirsty, he prefers a soft drink. Only 1 in 10 of Russia's citizens is a member of the Communist Party. This is Alex Osipenkov, head of Intourist, Leningrad branch, a commie, but not a bad sort at all. This is the Resurrection Cathedral. It is a comparatively young church. Construction was started in 1883 and finished in 1907. It is a smaller copy of St. Basil's in Moscow. It is a favorite subject for local artists. Not only does it have color and interesting lines, it has an exciting history also. It was built to commemorate the assassination of Tsar Alexander in 1881. A homemade bomb was thrown between his feet on this spot where the church now stands. Horribly injured, he died an hour later. Just another incident in Russia's bloody history. We were told that this was a working church, one of the few still operating in Russia. It appears that today was not one of its working days. Because of a padlocked door, the old peasant lady could not enter. Still she prays, knowing that through faith, her prayers will be answered. This very elaborate sculpture is often confused with the famous bronze horseman statue of Peter the Great. Although very beautiful, it is not the bronze horseman of world renown. That we shall see later. St. Isaac's Cathedral is a fine example of the cost-be-damned attitude of the builders of Tsarist Russia. No desirable material was bypassed because of cost. Only the granite used came from local quarries. The other stones and materials were gathered from all over the world. St. Isaac's is about 200 years old. It is the tallest building in the city. No longer used for worship, it was converted to a museum when the communists came into power.